Attention! What you are about to learn will shatter your understanding of history. Are you ready for a shocking truth? Just imagine for a moment. Certain artifacts, seemingly ordinary objects we encounter daily without a second thought about their true significance, suddenly point to a completely different understanding of events, an alternative chronology, an entirely new reality. They topple our established beliefs like a house of cards built upon the shifting sands of deceit and unspoken truths. Take, for instance, the cast iron heating stoves of the 19th century. Prepare to be amazed. Their appearance conceals so many unsolved mysteries, so many blatant contradictions that defy all rational thought. They simply don't fit into any conventional worldview. Why? Why does no one notice these glaring anomalies? Why does history stubbornly remain silent? Brace yourself for a revelation that will force you to reconsider everything you once believed. These stoves, these true works of art crafted from cast iron, astonish with their incredible, virtually impossible casting for that era. The intricate detail is so fine, so delicate, it appears as though it was created not by human hands, but by sorcerers wielding forgotten secrets of matter. They call into question absolutely everything. The technology of that time, the manufacturing capabilities, the level of scientific and engineering advancement. Just look at them closely. Examine every detail, every single curve. Even a casual glance sparks profound bewilderment. Their true purpose, their operating principles, a complete gaping enigma that shatters any attempt at rational explanation. The cast iron heating and cooking stoves of that period. One might assume they should be understandable, so similar they appear to our modern counterparts. At first glance, everything seems obvious and clear. But that's not the case. Oh, how mistaken we are, mistaking appearance for reality. And why has no one asked these obvious questions before, content with merely superficial explanations? After all, the inconsistencies scream out for attention. We see a loading door for firewood, but its dimensions often don't match the typical length of logs. It's too small, too cumbersome for loading the fuel we're accustomed to. Try it yourself. It's awkward, it's impractical. It's as if it wasn't designed to burn ordinary firewood at all. This is absurd, a glaring illogicality that should have been obvious to everyone. The presence of an oven, a smoke pipe, all of this seems like standard features, typical of any stove, raising no questions. Yet even here lies a hidden catch, a subtle yet disruptive detail that completely alters our entire perception of these devices. A closer look at 19th century heating and cooking stoves reveals a similar principle. Yet the chimney pipe sometimes merely simulates its function, proving to be a mere prop. It simply cannot vent smoke or anything else. It lacks proper fittings, diameter, or construction for effective operation. Incredible, yet true. How is this possible if these were indeed wood-burning stoves? Who created such deceptive facades, and why? To replicate such artistic casting today, in our age of advanced technology, computerized machines, and unique alloys, this would only be feasible with a radical overhaul of the entire cast iron production, its properties, smelting technologies, methods of molding and processing. We don't possess such capabilities, even today, yet we're told this was achieved in the 19th century. Do you see where this is leading? It points to unprecedented, almost fantastical possibilities for artistic casting, to a completely different, superior level of technology in that very backward past described by official sources. Why was this technology lost? Where did it vanish? Who concealed it from humanity? The cast iron stove fireplace of that period also raises many questions, but particularly enigmatic is the small door at the very top, as if intended for something entirely different from ordinary fuel. What size firewood or coal would have been necessary for such compact combustion chambers? This remains unclear, shrouded in deep mystery. The fuel must have been incredibly tiny, almost miniature. Could we be talking about matches? Or something even more minuscule, some unknown substance capable of generating immense heat from a minimal volume? Coal, in such miniature designs, clearly couldn't have been an effective fuel. It simply wouldn't have provided enough heat to warm even the smallest space, let alone larger rooms. But there's more. The technical aspect of these stoves also sparks considerable surprise if we strip away their dazzling aesthetic component and focus solely on functionality. Where is the draft door, essential for creating the airflow without which wood or coal cannot burn? And what about the ash pan for removing combustion byproducts, which inevitably form when burning any solid fuel? They are absent, they simply aren't there. Let me reveal a secret that will send your thoughts racing for answers. Or are they so cleverly concealed, so organically integrated into the design, that they are utterly imperceptible to our eyes? How could such unparalleled cleanliness and smoothness of surface be achieved if fire was burning inside, leaving ash and soot? The placement of the flue pipe, its size, the method of connection, these often remain out of sight, as if they never existed at all, as if they weren't even necessary. Why is there a handle on the bottom right of some models if there are no obvious adjustment mechanisms related to fire or air supply? What could possibly be regulated by a handle located directly on the firebox door when in operation it would be glowing red hot, burning any hand that touched it? These questions, this paradox, demonstrate these stoves were not merely beautiful, but technically baffling to us, completely out of step with our logic of wood-burning heating. What if their logic was entirely different, based on principles we have yet to discover? Show me firewood that would fit into such tiny firebox volumes. And more importantly, how long would one such minuscule load of wood last to heat even the smallest room, let alone cold, damp premises? And even more so, how many such stoves would be required to heat enormous rooms in old houses with their towering ceilings, unsealed windows, and constant drafts? This seems utterly unrealistic and extremely inefficient. Wouldn't it have been simpler, more logical, to build one large stove or fireplace for centralized heating, as was implemented later and proved far more practical? Why didn't they do that, if ordinary firewood was the fuel? And once again, we encounter the absence of a visible flue pipe on some models, an absolute enigma for a wood-burning stove, as smoke must go somewhere. On the lower door of many stoves, a certain regulator is visible, whose purpose is completely unclear, unless it's a hidden system for some other energy, beyond simple combustion. Consider this. What if it wasn't a regulator for fire, but for something far more complex, something we have lost? Even where a pipe is visible from behind at the top, it's unclear how or where to connect it or how to secure it so it wouldn't collapse under its own weight or from vibration. Such a stove would need to be placed far from walls for fire safety to prevent ignition, which also impacts its placement and makes it even more impractical for traditional use. Again, we observe the small firebox volume and the mysterious regulator on the door. Shocking. This blatantly contradicts all the logic of wood-burning heating, which presumes simplicity and functionality. Was wood truly not their fuel? Are we looking at these stoves entirely incorrectly? In some stoves, there are as many as 4 doors. One for the firebox, one for the draft and ash. This is understandable. It fits conventional logic, albeit with reservations. But why 2 additional doors if the uppermost one is already presumably an oven or a warming compartment? What function do they serve? What secret purpose do they conceal? A purpose we cannot fathom. Such a stove would require detailed instructions for use, preferably in a modern, understandable language. Otherwise, its operation seems simply impossible, full of riddles and potential errors. How can we explain the existence of such miniature stoves? Where would one load fuel into them, if not wood, which simply wouldn't fit? Could these tiny ones have been tent stoves or portable fireplaces? Yet even for those, they seem too complex, too fragile, and too impractical for harsh outdoor conditions. Was something like matches burned in them, such a minuscule amount of fuel that it lasted only minutes, not hours, for heating? Such a stove could be placed in a car, but how to use it while in motion remains an absolute mystery. Some specimens defy any explanation for their use whatsoever. They simply exist, like monuments to an incomprehensible era, challenging our understanding. But here's what truly astounds and sends chills down your spine, forcing you to ponder something utterly incredible. On one of these stoves, on the right side of the door, a symbol is visible, strikingly similar to the International Radiation symbol. This symbol, recognized worldwide as a warning of danger, is clearly engraved on the metal. And on the sides, there are vents for hot air to escape. Yet, as we've already noted, there's no ashpan or draft door, key elements for wood-burning heating. On other doors, this unsettling radiation symbol is also present, like an unambiguous warning or an indication of something profound and hidden. This leads to very serious contemplation, making us consider an entirely different purpose for these devices, a technology that must have been concealed. It cannot be. Or can it? Perhaps we are looking at evidence of a forgotten era where energy was obtained differently. What if? What if we were to assume that these stoves didn't use wood or coal, but rather certain elements that emitted heat akin to uranium? Then everything falls into place and all the illogicalities dissipate like smoke. All official information we have about radiation might be far from complete, biased, and deliberately distorted. More and more data emerges, pointing to our shallow understanding of this force, of its two sides, destructive and creative, deadly and life-giving. And here is direct, undeniable proof that will give you goosebumps: a cast iron stove inscribed with radium. This cannot be a coincidence. It's a direct hint, a cry from the past that official science chooses to ignore. Only such stoves, operating on powerful compact thermal elements, could effectively heat enormous castles, palaces, and spacious rooms of old mansions, which otherwise would be impossible to warm using any methods known to us. And the flue pipe in them, perhaps, wasn't intended for venting smoke, as we're accustomed to believing, but for expelling a light, possibly unpleasant odor that might arise from the decay of these unique elements. Let me reveal a secret that will shatter your perception. This changes absolutely everything. The entire familiar world you knew crumbles before your eyes, revealing an incredible truth. I believe these stoves were originally manufactured for the use of an entirely different kind of fuel element. These elements could emit thermal rays, providing exceptionally efficient and long-lasting heating, without dirt, without soot, without ash, without the constant need to replenish firewood. It was clean, silent, powerful energy. Those who later came into possession of these stoves, perhaps after some global catastrophe, a shift in civilizations, or a great oblivion, likely used the remaining supply of elements until it was fully depleted. And when the supplies ran out, when the secret was lost or hidden, they began to cobble together adaptations for wood and coal, attempting to fit an ancient, high-tech system to primitive needs, to barbaric methods of generating heat. That's the crux of it. That's why we see these absurd, illogical designs that, at first glance, appear meaningless. Now you see the true picture? The same applies to fireplaces in old castles, which, as anyone who has ever tried to use them knows, are extremely inefficient when burning wood. In essence, they are simply enormous holes in the wall through which more heat escapes than they provide. Their design is often completely unsuited for lighting an open fire within them. Smoke constantly billows back into the room, stinging eyes and lungs, turning the space into a smokehouse. Inefficient venting of combustion gases makes their use with wood equivalent to lighting a bonfire in the middle of the floor, albeit with a beautiful but useless frame. The efficiency rating of such wood-burning fireplaces is virtually zero. It's a pure loss of heat, a constant draft and discomfort. Your face burns from the heat while your back freezes, the classic effect of a wood-burning fireplace, well known to anyone who has tried to use one. So why were they built so enormous, impractical, and useless if not for burning wood? The answer is obvious if we look at it from a new perspective. Of course, it's possible such fireplaces didn't operate solely on the radiating fuel elements we've discussed. Perhaps they also utilized atmospheric electricity, free energy, as an alternative power source capable of generating heat without burning fuel. Imagine a world where energy is drawn directly from the air. It simply means that the people who inherited this magnificent legacy after the loss of the original elements or technologies had to convert them to wood, creating this meaningless structure that merely simulated a function. Why was this information hidden from us for centuries? Who benefited from this? Who sought to monopolize knowledge and energy? These questions should trouble us. We see the attempt to adapt a mechanism designed for a different, more advanced technology for use with wood, not only in stoves and fireplaces. Perhaps even part of the infrastructure, such as the railway system in Russia, operated on that same radium or a similar energy system. The speed of construction of the Trans-Siberian Railway still sparks wonder and many questions among engineers and historians. In just 13.5 years, from March 1891 to September 1904, a continuous rail line was laid across an enormous continent. An incredible, simply unthinkable feat for a time when there was neither modern machinery nor sufficient resources. From Mias in the southern Urals to Vladivostok and Port Arthur on the Pacific coast, That's a colossal distance, approximately 9,100 versts, or slightly less than 10,000 kilometers, including connecting branches and spurs. The railway was laid at an average construction rate of 740 kilometers per year. These are simply mind-boggling figures that defy the capabilities of that era. The railway became fully operational only in 1916, after the construction of the bridge across the Amur. But was this truly construction, or something else entirely? What's more, it wasn't built in the usual way we lay rails on clean, prepared ground, as is done today. Shocking, numerous photographs and excavations conducted by enthusiasts show that the railway was simply unearthed from beneath layers of earth, mud, and vegetation, like some ancient artery buried after a global catastrophe. Photographs of the railway found beneath the embankment of a modern highway confirm this theory, demonstrating we weren't building, but restoring a forgotten legacy. We tend to believe that steam locomotives, or more accurately locomotives, were originally designed to burn coal or wood. But if that were the case, the entire system of maintenance and refueling with fuel and water should have been thoroughly conceived, not merely imitated. But do we see this? Where is this logic, this foresight, in the organization of fuel depots and water towers that should have been at every turn? To a modern person, such a steam locomotive seems far more complex than a modern electric locomotive or even a nuclear reactor. Its design is shocking in its excessive complexity. A multitude of tubes, valves, pressure gauges, and regulators attest to its incredible engineering sophistication, comparable to a finely crafted clock mechanism or even a spaceship. The running gear of the locomotive, its numerous moving parts, demanded the highest level of skill and knowledge from engineers, true virtuosos of their craft. The operators of such locomotives would have to be individuals with vast experience and an extensive body of knowledge. Their training took years. It was an entire science. Incidentally, an analogous engine is used in a nuclear submarine, a steam engine, but heated differently. The only difference is that it's heated by radiation from uranium fission. Perhaps for these locomotives as well, a different type of heater, similar to radium, was originally intended rather than merely burning wood. Incredible, yet a fact that compels us to doubt the entire official narrative. Are you prepared to embrace this version, which shatters a centuries-old established picture? How else are we to understand such extravagance as the water towers at railway stations? At virtually all stations, with the exception of the most closely situated ones, stood genuine works of art, not merely functional objects. These were magnificent architectural structures adorned with bas-reliefs, columns, domes, and incredible detailing. These water towers were built conscientiously to last for centuries, with excessive aesthetic flair, as if they were designed for palaces rather than the dirty utilitarian task of refueling with water. Far more was invested in their creation than was necessary for the simple task of supplying water. It was pure art, embodied in iron and stone. Compare them to the utilitarian featureless building from 1938 standing nearby, and the difference will astound you. These are two completely different eras, two different worlds, as if separated by a chasm of hundreds of years. How can we explain this incredible luxury and wasteful expenditure if the sole purpose was functional use? For railway stations and depots too, time and resources were found to make them beautiful and durable, as if they were intended for eternity, for future generations, rather than for momentary need. Every detail was meticulously thought out, ensuring not only functionality, but also unprecedented aesthetics simultaneously. But what about the storage of fuel for these highly complex machines, these engineering masterpieces? Virtually everywhere I've visited along the railway, coal lies exposed to the elements: rain, snow, scorching sun. Such storage leads to frequent spontaneous combustion, which is a serious problem, a massive threat to the entire system, and at times results in large-scale disasters. Coal, when wet, eventually begins to heat up and smolder, leading to fires that are impossible to extinguish. Trying to douse it is futile, as water only intensifies the burning, exacerbating the flames and turning it into an uncontrollable inferno. It's simply pushed aside with a bulldozer, and they wait until it completely burns out. Not a very well-conceived option for such a complex system of logistics and ensuring uninterrupted movement, is it? This is pure chaos that defies all engineering logic. With firewood, the situation is even worse. Left out in the open, it gets damp and rots, losing its calorific value and becoming unfit for use as fuel. Is it truly possible that, having designed a locomotive of such complexity with water heating, the engineers of that era couldn't go beyond simply burning wood and coal, failing to devise a system for fuel storage? That's absurd. You will be astonished when you learn the truth. I believe that on the railway, too, fuel elements like this mysterious radium were originally used, providing clean, efficient, and compact fuel. It's just that when they ran out, when their supplies were depleted or the technology was lost, locomotives had to be adapted for wood and coal, transforming them into less efficient, more labor-intensive, and cumbersome machines. This was a step backward in development, a forced transition to primitive technologies. Just imagine how much this changed the world, slowed progress, forcing humanity down an entirely different path, one full of hardships and missed opportunities. So what do we know about this enigmatic word, radium? Here's a French postcard from 1910 with the inscription, "Radium Heating." Only 12 years after the official discovery of radium by Marie Curie and her husband, and already the word was being used in the context of heating. People were already fantasizing about radium's application, or perhaps they had already seen how fireplaces and stoves worked with this element, fully understanding its colossal potential. I doubt the fantasizing part, for I know how much radium cost when it was first extracted. It was not an element for mass production and cheap advertising campaigns. The official history of radium's discovery is also full of contradictions and questions if one looks closely at the details, if one dares to ask uncomfortable questions. A sensation. Are you ready for it? For an exposé that will shake your world. In 1898, Pierre Curie and Maria Skłodowska-Curie discovered two radiation-emitting elements that forever changed science and our understanding of the world. One, discovered in July, was named polonium in honor of Maria's homeland, Poland. The second element, found in December, was named radium, after the Latin word radius, meaning ray. The official history claims they did this under terrible, almost inhumane conditions in some dilapidated shed with an earthen floor, suffering from poverty and deprivation. Maria and her husband, allegedly with bare hands and in simple basins, supposedly washed their first gram of radium, overcoming incredible difficulties, sacrificing themselves for science. Then, according to this legend, they died of radiation sickness and were buried in lead coffins that are not to be opened for 1,000 years, so as not to expose the world to the danger of radioactive radiation. It is precisely this heartbreaking narrative, full of drama and self-sacrifice, that remained in our memories after school lessons, ingrained in our consciousness as an unshakable truth. This is a lie. This cannot be. We were deceived. However, we can now view this story in an entirely different light if we cast aside bias, if we allow ourselves to question the official version. It turns out, Pierre Curie did not die of radiation sickness as we were told. He perished under the hooves of a horse-drawn carriage that suddenly appeared on the street, as if from nowhere. It seems to me this was no accident, no mere tragic coincidence, if one considers who he and his wife associated with, what powerful circles stood behind them, interested in their discoveries and their silence. Witness elimination? Were his discoveries so dangerous that he had to be silenced? Maria Skłodowska herself, who worked without any protection with immense quantities of radioactive elements, lived for many years after these deadly experiments, leading an active life. 2 years after her husband's death, she had a married lover, 5 years her junior. A surprising, scandalous detail for an emaciated, dying victim of radiation. Apparently, 12 years of working with uranium, radium, and polonium without protection did not impact her libido, her vitality, or her capacity for a full, passionate life. What does this signify, if not that the radiation she worked with was entirely different, safe, or that she knew something that was being hidden from us? In the photograph, we see her second daughter, Eve, whom Maria gave birth to while carrying a vial with 1 gram of radium on her chest, like a talisman, like an amulet. This vial served as her nightlight in the evenings, emitting a soft, mesmerizing glow. Imagine that, to live next to such a light source, knowing that 1 gram of radium emits as much as 1 ton of uranium ore. Looking at these photos, keep in mind that 1 gram of radium emits as much as 1 ton of uranium ore. and this radiation was considered deadly. Yet Maria's second daughter, Eve, lived to be 103 years old. This utterly refutes the thesis of radium's deadliness, of its inevitable fatal impact on living organisms. Furthermore, Maria herself, carrying a vessel with radiation equivalent to 1/9 of the entire Chernobyl disaster's release, lived 66 years. And she gave birth to perfectly healthy and beautiful daughters, which contradicts the myth of mutations and infertility that was so stubbornly imposed upon us to instill fear. Why were we lied to about Marie Curie and radiation? Who benefited from this? Now, let's read the official history to understand what was required to obtain 1 gram of pure radium. This required 100 tank cars of water, 5 railway cars of various chemical substances, another 100 railway cars of coal, and most importantly, several railway cars of uranium ore. It was an entire industry, demanding colossal resources and labor. For 1 gram of pure radium, one had to pay over 200 kilograms of gold, an astronomical sum accessible only to the wealthiest individuals on the planet, entire nations, or powerful financial entities. According to the official history, Pierre and Maria Curie were poor as church mice. How does that reconcile with such colossal expenses? Who then funded this entire banquet for extracting such a precious, such a rare element? Who stood behind their research? You'll never guess if you only trust textbooks. With the assistance of the distinguished geophysicist Edward Suess, then president of the Austrian Academy of Sciences, the Austrian government agreed to gift the Curies 1 ton of pitchblende. However, the other 10 tons, the bulk of the raw material, were paid for by none other than the millionaire Baron Edmund de Rothschild. A name that consistently surfaces in shadowy historical narratives concerning hidden finances and influence. Coincidence? I think not. Rothschild wasn't merely a sponsor. He was, by all accounts, the patron and overseer of these experiments. His interest was deeply personal and pragmatic. It's entirely possible that he already knew what and how to search for, attracting talented scientists for his own ends, utilizing their genius. By funding their experiments, he likely aimed to restore the production of radium that might have existed in a previous civilization, whose traces we seek everywhere. And judging by Marie's longevity and her children's health, he most likely succeeded. He achieved his goal, deciphering a part of ancient secrets. Amazing. Ancient technologies, incredible knowledge in the hands of the chosen few, accessible only to a select inner circle. This is the true scale of the conspiracy. However, it was decided to permanently discourage the rest of the population from using radium in order to keep this technology in the hands of the select few to prevent its widespread dissemination. To achieve this, an aggressive, pervasive advertising campaign about its magical properties was first launched, designed to create an illusion of accessibility and benefit to mask the true intentions. Advertisements for radium toothpaste, promising a radiant smile and strong teeth. X-ray shoe fitting machines, allowing one to see the bones of the foot as if by magic. A mad, deadly, dangerous idea. Ionizing cosmetics, promising eternal youth and beauty. Radioactive remedies for all ailments, offered as a panacea for any malady. Mineral water, sold as radiator from the city of Kuibyshev, or Borjomi from Tiflis. Even Soviet glasses, tinted with radiation, were part of this grand deception, this massive hoax. And finally, glow-in-the-dark watches, which became a symbol of dangerous beauty and false progress. There was much more. Even radium chocolate was sold in stores, creating an impression of widespread use and complete safety. But with 1 gram of radium costing 200 kilograms of gold, it's highly unlikely it was included in these products. It was a pure fabrication, a grand deception, a manipulation of people's gullibility. Later, thorium and other isotopes were found there, but radium was utterly absent. It simply couldn't have been there due to its exorbitant price. Naturally, many people died from these miracle products, mistaking poison for medicine, becoming victims of a cynical game. But the desired effect was achieved. Now, at the mention of radiation, people recoil in panic and primal fear without even attempting to understand the nuances. Shocking. The world was deceived, and this deception solidified radiation's image as absolute evil, making its widespread beneficial application impossible. Apparently, 2 types of radiation exist in nature, both registering similarly on a Geiger counter, yet having entirely different effects on living organisms in the environment. One type we witnessed in the early days of the Chernobyl disaster, when people perished within hours, terrifying the entire world and generating widespread fear. But 30 years later, radiation levels decreased, yet the area is still considered dangerous and unfit for human habitation, an exclusion zone. However, nature seems unaware of this, displaying a vibrant blossoming of life, as if mocking our fears in official reports. How is this possible if radiation is deadly and merciless? Black storks, cranes, a lynx with her cub, bears, local Bambis, deer, a moose with her calves, bison, all of them live and thrive there, reproducing, demonstrating incredible adaptation and resilience that completely contradicts the conventional picture of a radioactive wasteland. Looking at these photos, and also learning that Hibakusha, victims of the atomic bombing in Hiroshima, live long lives and many of them having children without deformities, raises serious, justified doubts. Doubts arise concerning the information about radiation that we are provided, as reality often contradicts the official version, which is supposed to be undeniable. This cannot be. Or is it simply another hidden truth that is being carefully concealed from us, maintaining false fears and limitations? It's time to remove the blindfolds. And finally, let's recall how Roman villas were heated according to the official history, which seems ridiculous. They had hot air flowing beneath their floors from fires that servants kept burning tirelessly 24 hours a day in special subterranean chambers. Moreover, according to this version, all the surrounding forests were cut down for firewood, turning the vicinity into a scorched desert, and the owners, unaware of the dangers of carbon monoxide, quietly passed away in their sleep. That's a joke, of course. But how absurd is the very idea, how illogical and costly. In textbooks, we see idealized, clean, neat illustrations of these hippocausts, like works of art where everything functions perfectly. Yet photos from actual excavations show them looking quite different, as if they were never used for their intended purpose, as if fire never burned there. Do you sense the catch, this glaring inconsistency? The heated floors of villas should have looked roughly as depicted in diagrams, black with soot, covered in grime and ash, like the bottom of an old furnace. But the reality is different, completely at odds with this picture. They look entirely different. Even the hollow bricks aren't stained with soot, remaining clean, as if fire never burned there, as if they were used for something else. And it's dangerous, accumulating years of soot in hard-to-reach places from where it cannot be cleaned. That's a direct threat of ignition, of the destruction of the entire structure. As often happens with uncleaned fireplaces and chimneys, soot ignites and a fire breaks out, burning the house to the ground. What do you think actually heated the air under those floors in antiquity, if not wood? What if the same mysterious clean energy was applied here too? That's the key. That's where the truth is hidden. We must critically reevaluate our past and the knowledge passed down to us through generations without blindly accepting it as fact. Every artifact, every historical anomaly, every unspoken fact serves as a key to the truth if we dare to see them, if we are willing to cast aside prejudice. It's time to break free from conventional dogmas, to tear down the walls of outdated beliefs, and to start asking uncomfortable questions that lead to genuine discoveries, not convenient fables. Stop being blind. Stop being passive consumers of others' narratives. Understanding the true history of humanity can pave the way for incredible technologies that we don't even dream of today. It can give us the keys to the future. And most importantly, the future depends on how deeply we can comprehend our forgotten past, its lessons, its warnings, and its wonders. What awaits us on this path, full of discoveries and upheavals? Begin your own investigation. Delve into the details that official history ignores, conceals, suppresses. Awaken to the hidden knowledge that lies beneath centuries of concealment, awaiting its hour, waiting for you to uncover it. Look at the world with fresh eyes, free from imposed narratives, from false fears and prejudices. Understand this. The most incredible discoveries await those who dare to question the conventional, who are not afraid to go against the current. It's time to unveil the secrets that can change our perception of reality, turn it upside down, and grant us new freedom. Participate in the grand investigation of our shared past, which belongs to each of us, not to selected historians. Stop being a passive observer whose thoughts are shaped by others and become an active seeker of truth, one who isn't afraid to ask questions, who demands answers. Let us together unravel the riddles left by our ancestors, their silent messages, their warnings, and their hopes. Assemble the puzzle pieces scattered across the pages of history like fragments of a grand mosaic. For in this knowledge lies not only the past, but also the keys to our future, to a new era of prosperity and freedom. It is our duty to uncover the authentic picture, hidden from the eyes of ignorance and manipulation. Only then can we build a new world, founded on true knowledge, not on lies and deceit. Let this call to reevaluation be your first step on the path to enlightenment, to realizing the true power hidden within you. Investigate, analyze, compare, and don't be afraid to be the first to see the light of truth. Our shared heritage awaits its awakening, its fresh reading, its new interpretation. Open your eyes to the grand history that is just waiting to be told, to be retold anew, based on facts, not myths. Open the doors to a world where technologies and knowledge surpassed our current understanding, where humanity reached unimaginable heights. Begin your journey deep into time right now without a moment's delay. True knowledge is a freedom that no one can ever take from you. And are you ready for the freedom that comes with truth?